Welcome back to the morning meeting. I'm your host, Julio Briones. On today's 10-minute training session, we're going to talk about one of the most common questions that I get as a private duty home care consultant. That is, how do I set my prices? Now, there's a lot of different strategies, and if you go through the videos and you see our year one playlist, you'll see that I talk about the strategies on how to set your price, what strategy to use, whether you want to be competitive, whether you want to be run-of-the-mill, or whether you want to be a premier service. This is not what I'm talking about. We are going to discuss today the basic mechanics of what it takes for you to set your actual price. Now, please bear in mind, I do these videos for the broad sense. So it doesn't matter what state you're in if you're in the US, or if you're in Europe and Canada, or anywhere in the UK, the process is still the same. You're going to start out by trying to gather a list of your like competitors. What does that mean? That means if you are an agency that generally builds the government for services, and then you hire caregivers to send out to service these clients, that is the type of agency you want to compare yourself with. If you strictly do private pay and you are privately owned, then those are the agencies you want to compare yourself with. And if you have purchased a franchise and you are trying to establish yourself in the area and you're at the stage of the franchising process where you are setting your prices, then you want to stick to that type of agency. This is very important because the payout rates for someone who is paying privately versus someone who is using some government benefit to pay for services varies greatly. The same thing applies between a privately owned agency versus a franchised agency. The markup has to be a little bit higher because when you are privately owned, you do not have to worry about system fees or royalties. And therefore, you're going to be saving anywhere from 6 to 18%, depending on the system, that somebody who is a franchisee will have to cover. So take this into account and keep all of this in mind as you are doing your research and you are gathering information. We always recommend our clients contact a minimum of 3 to 5 like agencies. The reason for this is because you want a nice sampling of your local market. With 3 to 5, you'll get a nice bead for what your competitors are charging, and you can price accordingly. Now, once you have the information, make sure your list is thorough to the services you intend to offer. If you intend to do short hours, get the pricing for short hours. If you only intend to do a minimum number of service hours in the area, find the pricing for that. For live-in or shared living services, it's the same thing. You want to make sure that you are getting the correct information because you do not want to price a live-in service based on the hourly rate, and you do not want to price your standard hourly rate based on someone else's low hourly rate. Okay, meaning if you have a minimum of 4 to 6 hours, depending on location, because geographically it is very difficult for your caregivers to get to the clients, you do not want to base that price the same as someone else who is only offering 2 hours of service at any given place. Keep that all in mind. Also, if you are going to offer companion service versus personal care service, you want to take into account those differentiators as well. All of this comes into play so that you can develop a proper and accurate pricing model that you will not change for typically 1 year. You do not want to be known as the agency that is raising their prices every few months because you did not get a proper strategy. It will hurt your reputation. Now, once you've got all of this data, you have to really have made the decision as to whether you want to be a discounter, an average competitor, or a premier service. Remember, all of this has to do with your comfort levels, the type of service you want to offer, and your ability to stay firm and negotiate with the client. All of this will go in to set your final price. Once you have your strategy down, please understand your next step is understanding what is the going rate in your market to pay a caregiver. Then take into account what is the employer burden. For example, if you live in a state with a high income tax and payroll deduction, then you want to assure yourself that you are not just calculating your caregiver pay at the fair market value. So for example, and this is a very low example, if you live in an area that is going to pay 10 US dollars per hour, and it costs you an additional 20% to cover workman's compensation, disability insurance, and payroll taxes, both state and federal, then you need to make sure that there is enough of a cushion for you to cover $12 per hour. That is a very general, vague example, and most places do not pay that for private pay. But I just want you to understand where we're going with this. Once you've calculated that, you need to figure out what additional costs do you have? What is your gross margin going to be? Are you looking for a high margin or a low margin, or what other expenses will you have after payroll that you need to compensate for and still be able to pay yourself out once you become profitable? We recommend to all of our private pay clients that your gross margin should be a minimum of 40% in order to cover all of your expenses. Higher would be better, but again, that has to do with your comfort level and your office's individual pricing strategy. So once you have all of this in place and you have figured out what your competition is charging, what your pay is, and how much you need for your business to survive, now comes the easier part and figuring out what your price is going to be for each service. This has been your 10-minute training. Remember to click the like and subscribe button and leave us a comment and let us know what you think, or if you have any questions on how to set your initial pricing for your private home care agency. Thank you again. And remember, we're here to help you prepare, plan, and rebuild to get your business to where it needs to be.